Hello everyone, welcome to Pommyinoz. I hope you're all doing well. We're deep in our first week in lockdown version 2 here in Melbourne, and I hope everyone's safe and all the families are well. Welcome to my show. If you are new around here, please drop a like and a sub. That means the world to me. We're encroaching 300, and that would be grouse if we can smash 400 during a 6-week lockdown. We've got 6 weeks and you've got nothing better to do than like and sub to Pom. Remember that. So what we're going to do today is we're having a look at the preview between West Coast. Now West Coast play the mighty Blue Boys this weekend in the kind of bye-week round, but it's actually like 4 days. I don't quite get it either. But it should be an intriguing contest. We know that West Coast at the moment have really hit their straps and are really dominating at Optus. They come off the back of a really impressive performance against Geelong, where Geelong pushed them to the brink. But it was ultimately the class and efficiency of West Coast that got the job done. Now, Carlton, we're kind of in the same boat. We're playing really flashy football, and then we're getting diddled. If you are interested in my thoughts on that, please refer back to the last video, which is just at the top of the bar, where I kind of go into it in a bit more detail. But it's going to be an intriguing one, because this is the kind of game where we've seen how Carlton can respond. After a disappointing result, they genuinely do fight back. And all in all, there's a lot of sub-stories and subplots that I think make this game super interesting. I think for me, one of them is our ability at stopping disposals and also winning clearances. This is what we saw with West Coast last week. Once they got on top in that department, it was game over. They can cluster score. They have a lot of players in that midfield that can hurt you. They've got players all around the ground that can implement the pressure and really turn the tide. You've got players like Duggan that really look to implement their physical presence, make it hard, and wrestle. They kind of wrestle momentum, and we're a very momentum-based team. You can see that stat that was floating around. How many times there's been 30-point swings in our game? It's an alarming amount. And for me, that comes down to experience, and this is where West Coast really do have the chocolates on Carlton. They have a fantastic, experienced midfield, and a midfield of which that have got so many players that can play so many roles. And it's going to be a really intriguing little battle for our midfield to stop. For me, that midfield battle, we really need to bring it. We need to bring the intensity. One issue we Carlton at the moment is we're very low in tackle and pressure numbers in the midfield, even though we score so highly from turnovers. And it's going to be something that's going to happen. You're going to have to find your man, and you're going to have to stick to it, because you give these guys space, they're kind of surgeon precision like. They dissect the little holes around the ground, smart kicks, running on from a handball, and it's going to be really intriguing. For me, the intriguing battle of the game will be Nick Natanui versus Pitternet. Pitternet has won his fair share of hitouts this year, as has Nick Nat. We know how well Nick Nat's playing. It's a real battle there between two physical presences. One who gets a lot of kudos in Nick Nat, very charismatic, very exciting type footballer, where Pitternet's kind of like the runt of the ruckman litter. For me, he's getting a lot of abuse for last week, where he lost the battle quite comprehensively. But we've also got to remember he's match gone for 3 quarters, and he's beaten Goldstein for 4 quarters. They're big ruckmen in the world of ruckmen. These guys, the only one he hasn't played at the moment is Grundy, and they are all of that elite category. For me, Nick Natanui is top 3 ruckman in the comp on his day, and he's got that fitness. So this is a great test for Pitternet. And for me, what Pitternet has got to do is really make a contest, really be physical, really impose him, get your hands in the way, stop him being an impact of influence. If we can take Nick Nat away from the midfield group by Pitternet just basically giving him a handful, we're halfway there to winning it, because that is what happened last week for Geelong. Nick Nat just imposed. He drew midfielders to him. He became a menace. And when you create that one out in the midfield, West Coast will destroy you. The other key battle for me is their forward line. They've got Darling, they've got Kennedy. We know Kennedy thinks it's 1997 and he's snagging goals galore. It's going to be a really intriguing battle. This is going to be a big one though, because who do you put Josh Kennedy on? For me, it has to be Wheater in. And that kind of takes out the ability for Wheater to be this intercept mark and this score launch threat. I would not be giving this job to Liam Jones. Because Liam Jones at the moment is playing back shoulder and has been caught out of position, Kennedy will eat him alive. So for me, that means that you're going to have 2 guys that kind of flatter to deceive in Jones and Darling on each other. Now this should be an intriguing matchup because Darling, he doesn't lead like a traditional forward. He's kind of like, I'd say, eccentric in the way he moves and his patterns. And that kind of plays into Liam Jones because Liam Jones isn't going to have to be static. He is going to be moving. Darling does create space. And that helps him. But what thing that Liam Jones is going to have to do is really not play back shoulder. He relies heavily on his ability to fist and get his fist in the way of the marker. He's one of the top spoilers in the competition. And that is what he's going to have to make sure that he's playing a lot closer to Darling, because Darling has very gangly arms and he has an uncanny knack of taking marks. But if he can get on top early, Darling generally doesn't respond. Kennedy, on the other hand, is the opposite. He can go quiet for 3 quarters and snag 8. Darling is a very momentum-based mid and forward, and it's going to be very intriguing, them two battles. Those two are going to have to be strong. Wheaterin's going to have to really stifle, and I'm confident he can in Kennedy. But for me, when you stop Kennedy, genuinely Darling fires, and that's going to be a big job for Liam Jones. The back line, though, and the smalls particularly, are going to have to look to relieve pressure. West Coast implement a high forward press. They're really dangerous. So what we're going to be looking for is SPS. We're going to be looking for Doc. We know Doc does it, but we're going to be looking for SPS and Williamson to really provide that run and carry off halfback. You can't kick out and relieve pressure against West Coast because eventually they do turn it over. Eventually West Coast stifle it. They look to bring it on the ground down the wing and really hit up inside 50 very quickly and very hard. So we are going to have to be relying on SPS to do something he hasn't done for the last couple of weeks, and I've been heavily critical of him, and that is break lines. Take the ball in hand and look for the kick. We're going to have to play, and it suits Teague's game style, a high risk, high reward. You're going to have to look to run down the wing, chip kick it back inside into the corridor and utilise it. You've got to spread them. If you start getting in that default status, booting it down the wing, and Geelong were heavily guilty of this, they love it. They love routine, West Coast. They will just pack the wings, look to bring it to ground, quickly move it back inside 50 before you can reset. So it's going to be a lot of onus on Willow and SPS to really provide that zip, because you've got Jamie Cripps there, who is one of the premier defensive forwards, who will look to play that kind of almost tag-like role on your defence, your backline. He doesn't make it easy. Very rarely doesn't stick a tackle. So it's going to be interesting. We need to provide that run and carry. And I think SPS here, this is make or break for him. If he does play this weekend, we've got to look for it. He's got to look for them lines. The forward line, though, matches up pretty well. We know how good the back line is there, but our forward line, it has the ingredients to trouble them. If you look at what happened with West Coast, a lot of the smalls at Geelong really did provide an outlet for them. And it's good for Carlton, because Carlton have to have that forward pressure, have to look to Cromwell. I think if you've got McKay there, Casbolt, and it looks like McGovern's going to get up, we've got the 3 targets there. It's important, though, that you hit targets, because they're just as good as us on the transition from the back line. They score heavily as well from turnovers, and they look to put pressure on you. But it's going to be important that we're going to have to see Cunners, we're going to have to see Martin, and particularly Betts, who has really improved his tackle numbers. Make it hard. Make them kick it long. If you can put the pressure on them, you take away the short option, they do kick it long, and teams have had success this year in that. But it's such a high requirement with West Coast. They are so efficient, they're so fit, they're so well drilled that they do find gaps. But it's important that you man up at all times and put a lot of forward craft pressure on them. If you can do that, genuinely you're halfway there to really breaking out their backline, because they've got some exceptional users down back. Hearn, Shepherd, even Barras, even McGovern. These players, whoever they play, whoever's fit, they just have a plethora of players to come in, and they're tough. Also worth noting, Oscar Allen is a very dangerous, he's kind of like their Casbolt, their swingman, who can play back and forward. Someone's going to have to be on him as well, because if you take out Darling, if you take out Barras, this guy just pops up, and he's a very proficient in the air. I would love to see Casbolt work with him extensively one-on-one. Kind of, you don't often see a tall man shadowing a tall man. But I think Casbolt's got the goods, because for me, Casbolt is going to be key to this. His ability to really stifle and make a contest aerially is going to play into Carlton's hands. They're my thoughts on it. I think we can get the job done. Call me naive, call me stupid, but for me, if we play our A game can match up for them. I keep saying this. I do believe Carlton can only beat Carlton, and it's going to be intriguing. We're going to have to be acquitted for 4 quarters. This is by far our toughest test. West Coast at home. Hopefully the WA contingent of our Carlton fans will bring the noise, bring the heat, and really impact the players, because the West Coast fans as well are just as ferocious and volatile as us. Should be a great game, and it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be a tight affair, or West Coast are going to get on top and take it away. But for me, it should be an exciting thing. Let me know in the comments, where do you think the battle's going to be lost and won? What are you looking for? Tell me some potential changes. For me, my changes, I'd love to see Honey and McGovern come in, and I'd probably give a rest to Old Cunners and Callum Moore. But let me know, guys, in the thoughts. Love to hear from you guys and girls. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Go Blues. Pom out.